As I was reading the text several times, I was struck by Jesus' comment about the importance of knowing the scriptures combined with the power of God, and the setup in which the Jerusalem establishment is found themselves. They have arrived in this place of not knowing the scriptures and not knowing the power of God. And this is why we're doing Restore 2022. We want to read the scriptures together. We want to know God and his power as we grow in our confidence of who he is and how do we continue our lives of worship for him. I mentioned it yesterday that between chapters 21 and 22, there are three parables, and they kind of are very similar in the way that they address similar things. So the scope of the parable of the two sons shows and leads us to see the quality of Israel's leaders. The parable of the wicked tenants exposes the responsibility and the guilt of people listening in, as well as the leaders themselves, and not doing anything about it. But here in Matthew chapter 22, we have the parable that is a little bit broader than the other two. It shows the resistance and the contempt in which Israel as a whole has treated God's grace towards them. The wedding feast is not the kingdom, however. It's the beginning of the celebration of the kingdom. It's the beginning of the marriage supper of the Lamb, which we read in Revelation chapter 19, verse 9. The people, the slaves of the king, invited, showed more interest in their own possessions and the activities than they did in the banquet. And this was such a big offense. They refused the invitation of their king, which was actually both an honor and a command. And the point of all these three parables is quite clear. God would judge Israel's leaders because what? They have rejected the Messiah. He would postpone the kingdom and allow anyone to enter it, not just the Jews. The prophets have predicted this, that the Gentiles would be part of this kingdom. What grace! This is not new revelation. However, the Jews, stuck in their pride, have come to believe that actually all they need to enter the kingdom is the qualifications that they have. But Jesus is teaching them that receiving God's gracious invitation, trusting in him, is the key to receive the kingdom of heaven. We've said it in the past, that the kingdom of heaven is a kingdom of heart. And here we continue with the dialogue in chapter 22 of Matthew. Israel leaders are confronting Jesus. Jesus' response is with wisdom, and he silenced them one after the other. And in this case, even with questions. Although their questions may sound or may be theological and come across as respectful, there was no respect for there, because actually they wanted to know how Jesus would react. They wanted to expose him. They wanted to know how he would react to the Roman overlords, what kind of litmus test he would pass, especially with paying the taxes. Because this would be the indicator to show the attitude towards the government. This was a really risky issue because Israel was a theocracy. And these accusers, they phrase their question that they want a yes and no answer, because they wanted Jesus to be really in trouble in this controversy. But Jesus refuses to give the yes and no answer. the answer that they wanted. Jesus chose to answer on his own terms, not theirs. And he picks up this coin. He asks for a coin. And this is the coin that most people use to pay the Roman tax. The value which was 1 day's wage for a working man. This coin, little one, bore the image of the emperor, Tiberius Caesar, sign of the divine Augustus. In one side, and on the other side was Pontifex Maximus. The Jews really struggled with both titles because both inscriptions were offensive. And they wanted to trick Jesus here. And the same thing happens with the Sadducees. Look at the intensity of the opposition that they create for Jesus. The Sadducees, this is the third group that try to trap him in one day. And again, this is the group that is declared that they don't know the scriptures nor the power of God. Jesus had spoken of people entering the kingdom after death, verse 10. But to do so, there would be a need for a resurrection. And then, again, the question with the Pharisees, it's very simple. Whose son is the Messiah? And as experts in the Old Testament, they know the answer. He is the son of David. So Jesus takes it a little bit further than how can David call the Messiah his Lord? He's citing here from Psalm 110 to illustrate this question. And in this psalm, David calls the person whom the Lord, Yahweh, exalts to his right hand, his Lord and Master. This psalm is clearly messianic, but the religious expertise has difficulty reconciling sonship that comes from David within the lordship of which this psalm speaks. Matthew's use of this passage is not just convenient to round off the question and answer session which Jesus has with these guys, and it demonstrates the king's authority. But this is the heart of the gospel. This is the heart theme of the gospel, because Jesus is not only the Messiah, but he is the son of David. And this fact has been established from the beginning of the gospel with the genealogy. But the psalmist anticipates the elevation of David's son to the highest place in God's presence. One commentator says that here Matthew is anticipating the closing movements of his gospel, as David's son and Lord is rejected prior to his exaltation to glory. God bless you, and join us for Matthew chapter 23 tomorrow.